Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the annual Carolina Family Meeting as part of Carolina Family Weekend. We're so glad to have you with us this morning for a presentation and discussion with our Chancellor and our Vice Chancellor and then our President of the Student Government Association. My name is Doug Searcy, and I'm along here with my wife, Beth Searcy. Together, we are the chairman of the national chairs of the Parents Council, and so glad to host this meeting today and to welcome you all to our discussion.
We're going to start right off with our Chancellor, and I'm going to provide a brief introduction, but I'm sure he needs no introduction. Kevin Guskiewicz is a neuroscientist, an academic leader, and a concussion researcher. And I feel like that Doug and I knew him before he became Chancellor because our son, who's a senior at Chapel Hill, works for the football team and has done several papers on concussions and has quoted him extensively. So exciting to have him. He's the 12th Chancellor of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. A keen and distinguished professor of exercise and sports science, he's been a member of Carolina's faculty since 1995. Chancellor Guskiewicz is a nationally recognized expert on sports-related concussions, and prior to beginning his time as Chancellor, he served as interim Chancellor role from February to December of 2019, and before that led the College of Arts and Sciences since 2016. So we are very pleased to have him with us this morning, and Chancellor Guskiewicz, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Doug and Beth, and it's good to be with all of you today. If this is your first Carolina Family Weekend, I want to welcome you, and we're so glad to count you as Tar Heels. We certainly wish that we could be celebrating a Family Weekend in person. It was one of my favorite events last year, and we're looking forward to a day when we can be back together in person. As a Carolina parent myself, I have a recent graduate who's back in graduate school at Carolina now, and I have a junior at Carolina. I certainly know that this is a stressful time for all of us. I've had the opportunity to view this incredible place through different lenses, but none more important than that of a parent. And so I sit with you today, and I want to help us work together to be sure that we're taking care of our students. Many of us are more directly involved in our children's semesters now than we probably had ever imagined. And like you, I worry about the added toll on mental health that further challenges some of our students. I know this, and I'm here to listen and tell you that we're working as hard as we can to support our students and families. And this is some of the most important work we'll do over these next several months. Our new student and family programs has done an excellent job of transforming their programming to make virtual events like this possible. I've had the opportunity to participate in several events with Student Affairs over the past month and a half to welcome our students back. And we started this semester off, as you well know, with many of our students studying virtually. And so this programming is really important. Many departments across campus are making efforts to make virtual learning as productive and positive as possible. We're learning along the way. This is sort of as I've said over and over for these past 6 months, really, there's no playbook for this, but I'm proud of the progress that we're making. I want us to encourage all of our students to take advantage of these opportunities and the programming that's been made available. I'm going to say a little bit about the decision to resume campus operations this fall. We know that for many of our students that the best experience for them and where they can thrive best is here on campus. And yet we did not anticipate some of what we experienced during those first 2 or 3 weeks of the semester as we started moving students back onto campus. And the magnitude and velocity of the spread of that virus took many of us by surprise. And I'm disappointed that we couldn't keep as many students on campus as we had hoped. Yet, despite these challenges, I continue to be amazed by our students, faculty, and staff, and their perseverance. And as I have had the opportunity to join classes over the past several weeks to visit with students and faculty, I've seen firsthand that our students are benefiting daily from our talented world-class faculty and our creative and dedicated staff, which certainly includes those on our student affairs team that you're engaging with today. We're using this opportunity to explore new ways of teaching and rethinking how we prepare our students for an uncertain future. Last week, I had the opportunity to sit in on a data science class that's part of our Carolina Away program. This is a program that we've been talking about for about 2 years, but we expedited the planning and creation of the program back in April, May, and June, whenever we realized that many of our students wouldn't be able to come back and study in person in Chapel Hill. 200 plus international students and many of our first year and transfer students. So we have 700 students enrolled in a program called Carolina Way. It's a way that we're connecting students through small learning communities, through events that Student Affairs is bringing, over 300 events, bringing to students virtually, and connecting them to campus, connecting them to each other, such that when they do get back here, hopefully this spring, that they'll feel as if they know the place better, and that they have had the opportunity to meet some people. And so again, we're learning as we work through this challenging semester. As I've told our faculty and staff, we're not going to just tinker around the edges. We're going to really, I'm determined to innovate and prepare our students for an unknown future, and try to do everything possible to reimagine our university. How can we reach more students? And I'm proud of the fact that we're teaching more students today than we ever have before, and that's in part because of some of the opportunities that virtual teaching and learning have brought. We are looking ahead to the spring. I know that many of our parents and students have questions about this. There still are a lot of uncertainties about that spring semester, about the path of the virus. But what I want to say is that we're surrounded by really talented and incredible people here, our infectious disease and public health experts that are helping to guide us alongside our faculty and staff. But my hope is that students will be on campus this spring, living and learning where I know they can thrive. So many of our students were adhering to our community standards as we attempted to provide an on-campus experience. And that's what I was most disappointed about, is that the on-campus experience in the classrooms, the dining halls, the student unions, libraries, et cetera, really was working well. And we have spent a lot of time identifying how we can help mitigate some of the challenges that we saw this early in the fall semester with off-campus activity, and bringing that into some of the residence halls. So we have many decisions to make over the next 7 or 8 weeks. We're looking to move the start date of that spring semester a little bit later. Right now, we're started for a January 6th start date. That's probably the earliest scheduled start date that I can recall in my 25 years here at Carolina. And so we are working with our teams of experts and faculty to look at moving that start date back, probably to either January the 13th or the 19th, which would allow us a little extra preparation time as we move into that spring semester. And we'll announce this start date within the next 2 weeks. We formed a new campus and community advisory committee that was charged this week. Reeves Moseley, who you'll hear from, our student body president, is a member of that 25-person committee, and I think they're going to help inform our decision making. It's comprised of faculty, staff, students, and some community members, and this group will reflect on the past 6 months and provide input to me and my leadership team as we move forward. We are also carefully watching the events of other universities and learning from the road that we've traveled, while focusing on the road in front of us, which is really where my focus is. But it's going to take all of us to have a successful spring semester, and I know that students, faculty, staff play a role in this, along with parents and families, and so we want to hear from you as well. So your attendance today is an important first step. I want to thank you for staying connected with the Carolina community. As we look to the spring, we need to hear from everyone. And finally, I'll just say that when I'm asked, and I have been asked many times over these past 3, 4, 5 months, and especially over the past 6 weeks, when I'm asked about Carolina, how are things going? How are we dealing with these challenging times? I respond by saying I'm proud of how our community, the students, faculty, and staff, are adapting. This is what great universities do. We learn to adapt during times of adversity. We don't sit down and just say, "Whoa, us." We step up, stand up, rise to the occasion. And these are extraordinary times, but we will emerge stronger. And I'm confident that our students will be even more resilient because of the road that they have had to travel with us. And so there's a lot of good news coming out of Chapel Hill. Just a few highlights. If you read the news and read some of our headlines over the past few weeks, but just in the last 10 days, the rankings have come out. So we've been, again, for 20 consecutive years ranked as a top 5 public university by U.S. News and World Report. Last week, the Wall Street Journal ranked us the 3rd best public university in the nation. And about a month ago, the Shanghai Global Rankings moved us into the top 30 for global universities across the world. And this one I'm really proud of, because I talk about Carolina being the leading global public research university, and we're passionately public. We're in many ways, as I say often, the most public of the publics, and not only the first public, but the most public. Our research numbers continue to climb. We've moved into the top, I think, 8 or 9 in those rankings, and it's the impact of that work that's more important than the dollars that come in to conduct that work. But it's the global piece that I've been really working hard on, both as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and now as Chancellor, to be sure that we can bring the world to Carolina, but also have the opportunity to send our students out into the world. And we're going to be sure that we can do that again soon, when it's safe to start up the study abroad program that we're so proud of. And we do have some students studying abroad this semester, and we know there will be more next semester. But the last thing I'll say is that, and I touched on this earlier, but we have the highest student enrollment ever at Carolina this semester. Our credit hours being taught is up about 10%. And we're anticipating another record year in admissions. And so our goal is to try to provide an affordable and education to be as accessible as possible to as many students as possible. So with that, I just want to again thank you, the Carolina Parents Council, for hosting, and to Doug and Beth for leading the efforts, and for your service as co-chairs. And I'm looking forward to taking your questions and hearing your thoughts and ideas as we move forward. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Chancellor Guskiewicz. We are so grateful for your leadership. You've obviously been a steadfast rock for us during this moment of difficult transition, and we appreciate both your knowledge and your spirit of Carolina, and how you've led us along the way. So thank you so very much. We do have a number of questions. We'll invite folks to submit those on the Q&A if you have some, but we have many that have been submitted before. And I'll simply begin by talking about and asking about the core of the college, which is student learning. And during this moment of transition and different modalities, we've had a variance in how students have received information. What are you hearing from faculty and staff about how students are learning, and how's your confidence level in our base core of trying to make sure we're instilling student learning across all that we do?
No, that's a great question, Doug. Thanks. So I'm really proud of the way our faculty pivoted very quickly back in March when we had to do this. And we prepared all summer for a variety of delivery methods. We had many of our faculty that just felt that they were going to be able to provide with the uncertainty that was still lied ahead. They prepared their classes for a virtual environment and went to workshops and learned how to deliver that instruction in a even better way than they did last spring. And we looked very closely at student evaluations coming out of that spring semester so that we could be certain that we were making adjustments as needed. We had a number of faculty that said, I want to come in and try to start teaching on campus, and let's see how it goes, but I'll teach it in a high flex model such that students could learn either virtually or in person. And we tried that method. In fact, the class that I'm teaching this semester, it's a graduate class called the American Professoriate, with graduate students and preparing them to enter the academic arena. And we taught that for a few weeks in a combined format. And so we're exploring this, but we're listening to our students. And I've really enjoyed, as I said earlier, having the chance to jump into classes, to talk to students, to hear from them, and to see how faculty are doing this. We have a survey that'll be going out from the College of Arts and Sciences, and our Abigail Panter, the Dean of Undergraduate Education, here very soon, that will talk about the experiences the students are having right now, so that we can even improve upon this as we move into that spring semester. But my guess for the spring is that we'll have some combination again of in-person, remote, and the high flex, where it can be taught in either format. But we're always striving to get better.
Thank you.
Can I say one last thing about this? office hours. I encourage our students, our faculty and students, I've heard from them that they actually really enjoy the virtual office hour. Our faculty has said that they've found that they're meeting with more students now than ever, because students don't want to come and sit outside the office door, sit in the hallway waiting for the next person to leave. And so they're signing up for office hours. And I've heard from both faculty and staff that they really like this. So I think that virtual office hours may be here to stay, even though we want to get our faculty back teaching in person.
Yeah. Can I just say I love that the chancellor just asked me if he could say one more thing? Sure, you go right ahead. You can say whatever you want.
It's your show. I'm just glad you invited me.
All right, the next question is, can you quantify the financial impact of COVID-19 on the university so far, and how is this deficit going to be mitigated?
Sure. So we've been monitoring this very closely, Beth, and let me just say that, every institution across our country is preparing for this. And we are very fortunate at Carolina. We have not seen many students who have opted out, who decided to defer or take a gap semester or a gap year. And so our enrollment is up, as I said, and that certainly is helping. My job is to make sure that the quality of that instruction is there, such that parents and students know that these are dollars well spent, and I'm confident we will be able to keep enrollment up and tuition where it is. We are losing, where our losses are in our auxiliary units, such as housing and dining and parking and athletics. And during those first 3 months of the pandemic, we have a world-class healthcare system here at Carolina, and we lost significant financial, there was financial constraints on our medical care system. So all of that bundled together, I mean, this is a world-class university that has to look closely at the finances, but we are fortunate to be supported by a legislature here in North Carolina that really believes in higher education. And we're I think the fourth best funded state in terms of state appropriation. So the taxpayers believe in us, and we have to, again, do everything we can to make sure that they know that there's a great return on that investment for the citizens of North Carolina. So we're watching it closely. Every revenue source at the university is threatened, quite honestly, but we have a great team that's putting measures in place, and we're looking at, just our non-personnel spending, for instance, that we would typically see in a semester is down. So just hosting events on campus, travel, other sort of non-personnel. We're also being very careful about not filling vacant positions. We're not filling 45 to 50% right now of the vacant positions are being held vacant for the time being, and the other ones we're often filling with temporary employees, just to see where we're going to be come January, February, as we work through this fall semester. So we're looking at this carefully, but there will be significant financial concerns moving forward.
Your development staff certainly have a responsibility during this moment, but just asking for additional support is imperative. One of our parents asked the question, how are we spreading the word to families and other constituents to ensure that they can offer financial support as appropriate?
Thank you. Another great question. We have been, I will say, we're right in the middle of a capital campaign, Doug, and it's going great. David Ruth just gave an update. I was part of four or five meetings just this week where David Ruth, the Vice Chancellor for Development, had the opportunity to meet with our alumni, various donor bases, and we are on a great trajectory. We are still ahead of pace in that campaign to raise $4.25 million and a $1 billion, $4.25 billion, I may have said million, sorry, $4.25 billion and $1 billion of that is for student aid. And that's where I am placing putting a lot of my time and effort right now, is to raise money for student aid. And we're again on a great trajectory there. But the Student Impact Fund was critical to helping students in need that had hardships back in March and through the summer months with the pandemic. And we were able to, through that Student Impact Fund, provide upgrades to internet service for students who had to move home and maybe didn't have the best internet access, even for students that had to live here on campus. And I want to emphasize, we still have about 1,400 students still living on campus. Some of those are graduate students, but even those students, there's needs there that we want to try to help them with. So I just would add that we're trying to do everything possible to help those students. But if any parent that can help with that student impact fund, that would be a wonderful way to help move us forward.
Thank you.
So COVID-19 isn't the only current challenge. Nationally, this summer we saw much unrest in race relations, mirroring some of the challenges that UNC experienced in recent years regarding Silent Sam and protests and related concerns. What updates can you provide that address these social movements as well as diversity and inclusion at Chapel Hill?
Thank you. Another very important topic, and one that we are devoting a lot of time to. I have to credit Dr. Sibby Anderson-Tompkins. Sibby is our she's our Chief Diversity Officer and Special Assistant to the Chancellor and Provost around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's formed a council. There's a representative from every school on campus, and they are working tirelessly to be sure that we have the right programming in place. I tell people that we have to, over the years, I think there's been a lot of talk about how to, around diversity and inclusion. And I said, we have to be sure that diversity is real on our campus. Our new strategic plan called Carolina Next, that I talked a little bit about when I had an opportunity to talk to this group last year. It had just been launched at that time, and we were, it's called Carolina Next, our strategic plan, Innovations for Public Good. And the first initiative in that plan, there are 8 initiatives, but the first is called Build Our Community Together. And we purposely put this initiative first because we felt that if we could make certain that every member of our campus community knows every minute of every day that their voice is heard here on campus and that their voice is important, that those other 7 initiatives will come together in a beautiful way. And so we are working really hard. That initiative has continued to provide diversity training for every unit on our campus. It really helped me, working with our History, Race, and Way Forward Commission, go to our Board of Trustees back in July to lift the moratorium that was in place. That moratorium was supposed to be in place until the year 2031, but we were able to lift it. That's the moratorium for renaming buildings on our campus. And as you know, we removed 4 names from buildings on our campus that we didn't believe were individuals that we wanted to honor in this way. I wanted students to come back in the fall and to not be moving into residence halls with names that I knew students didn't feel good, because I've listened and we've heard their voices. Didn't feel that we should be honoring these individuals. So that was just one more step forward. So we're really focused on this. And I'll just say one last thing. We are as diverse at Carolina as we have ever been. And when I say that, I mean our student body, our faculty, and our leadership team. And we look at this often, and we're comparing ourselves often against the other 64 AAU institutions. And we are more diverse than 80% of those AAU institutions. But we're going to continue to strive to have a diverse and inclusive campus community.
Good. Thank you so much, and we wish you the best. As we know, that creates a deep learning environment. The more the diversity is spread, and the more we discuss with one another our differences, it helps us to learn. So thank you so much. Let's shift gears and talk a little more about unintended consequences. The remote learning process does heighten and maybe even challenge our approach to mental health on campus, and in dealing with students at this age. It's such a critical and important issue. Can you talk a little more about mental health and how we're continuing to support our students during these transitions?
Sure. I'm very concerned, as I mentioned earlier, about the toll that I think the isolation has taken on the mental health of many of our students. And this was one of the reasons that throughout the summer, I said, along with our leadership team, that it was important to try to bring students back if we could safely, because I heard from many parents and students over the latter part of the spring semester and into those summer months that isolation was taking a toll. So there are different ways to look at the health risks that the pandemic creates. It's not just the virus itself, but it's about the isolation that's created. We work closely. We have an incredible campus health team that Dr. Johnson oversees, along with a number of other folks, but we are proud of their work. We've just hired 4 new counselors, and perhaps Dr. Johnson will say a little more about that in her comments. And we're open. I don't want to say 24/7. It probably feels like 24/7, but they certainly were there for a few weeks. And we're doing a lot of this in person, the counseling, but also virtually. And so we're doing everything possible to be sure that we can attend to the needs of our students.
How would you describe the university's current relationship with county and city leaders? Some of the COVID-19 comments hinted at some animosity towards students. What progress is expected in town-gown relations as we look towards reopening in the spring?
Another great question. And I will tell you, we have spent a lot of time on this. Mayor Pam Heminger and I have a great relationship. Chapel Hill Mayor Penny Rich is the county commissioner, again, a great relationship. And we have, I've talked for, since I entered this job, they were a few of the first people that I wanted to spend some time with, because I said that the town of Chapel Hill should always view this great university as an asset to the town. And likewise, I think the university needs to view the town of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Orange County as an asset. We have to work together. But clearly, the ramp up to the start of the semester and students coming back and some of the off-campus activity created some challenges for us. And we have been working really hard on this. Our Chief Police Dave Perry, along with Chief Chris Blue from Chapel Hill, are working closer together now than ever. I'm not going to be one that's just going to point the finger at one thing that created the challenges that we had at the beginning of the semester. There were a number of things, and we're learning from it. And one of those is clearly that we have to be sure that we can find ways to be sure our students who live off campus, whether they're in sororities and fraternities or many more live in off-campus apartments and houses, that they will adhere to the community standards. I was on a long a Zoom call yesterday with leaders from the University of Illinois, because they have found ways to do this using apps on phones and some unique testing protocols that prevent students who don't adhere to the standards from entering residence halls and libraries and student unions, et cetera. So we're looking at ways to do that. And I want to work with the town to say that we can use that same app for entering a restaurant or a store up on Franklin Street. So we're preparing for a very different sort of protocols that will be in place, I think, for the start of that spring semester.
Thank you. As we likely bring our time to a close, I'd like to leave you with the ending comment in looking forward to the future. We've talked about the transitions and the challenges, and Gracious, I know every day you deal with those and the depth of the practicality of the work you do. But where's your hope? What are you most excited about looking forward in the future? What are the things that give you excitement about the opportunities ahead? And what are you thinking about the days into the spring of 2021?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I appreciate that question. As I said earlier, my hope is that we will be able to bring students back to an in-person environment. Those that want to be here, I'm proud of the fact that we gave faculty, staff, and students flexibility and choice in decisions that they made for this fall semester. And I want to be able to do that this spring as well. I really, I feel for these seniors who, this is their last opportunity this spring to experience Chapel Hill, and I want to try to be sure that they have a great experience and a way to remember their days at Carolina in the midst of this pandemic. The first year students, sadly, they ended their high school careers, predominantly online, and most of them are now starting their Carolina experience online. And so I'm thinking about them, not to suggest that our sophomores and juniors are, many of them are still living in town around Chapel Hill, and they're getting to experience some of the on-campus environment. Again, because we have a lot of our campus operations are still open. And so my hope is that we can get back to some sense of normalcy, and that they will look back on this. This is my long-term hope, is that they'll look back on this in 15 years from now, 20 years from now, when there's that next whatever. There's going to be something else out there, right? And that they're going to look back on their time at Carolina, the year 2020, and say, I was there and I remember that. And this is what Carolina taught us how to adapt, and to try to help society learn to adapt. And that's what a great public university does. And they will they'll be great ambassadors for us once they're out as graduates of this magical place, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Nice job.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time this morning, your leadership of the university during this time, and those words of hope. I think we share them, and we are very grateful. So
Great. Thanks so much for your leadership. And I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to stay with the group for a little while before I have to jump into another meeting.
that would be great. Well,
Thank
we're
you.
going to transition. For those of you who are sending questions in through the Q&A and who have sent them in advance, I know we didn't get to all of them. We will be able to get to some of them now as we switch gears with the Vice Chancellor. So just hold on. We're going to get in as many as we can. So
Great. We're excited at this time to introduce Dr. Amy Johnson, our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Dr. Johnson joined us this summer in the middle of the transition related to COVID, but certainly has provided strong leadership and assistance to our entire Student Affairs team, and also in support of the Chancellor. Amy comes to us from a wide variety of locations in her career, from the University of Pennsylvania, University of Southern California, and then most recently from Eastern Washington University. She has experience both as a faculty member and as a practitioner, and that's just a wonderful blend to understand both the theory and the practice of the work that we do in student life. And so, Dr. Johnson, we'll turn this over to you, and thank you for your comments.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today. And Doug and Beth, thank you for all of your leadership as has been registered. It's great to have an opportunity to spend a few minutes today with folks. And I thought that I would spend my time perhaps giving our parents and family members some tips and some recommendations regarding the important role that you play and how we can encourage students' success right now, particularly during this pandemic time. And a number of the things I'm going to cover are good rules of thumb at any time, but they certainly are extraordinarily important in this period in which we are socially distanced from one another. And so my first note of encouragement and recommendation for you to encourage your students is to really help them understand the importance of being engaged in campus life at this time. We know from research that students who are connected with their universities, who get to know faculty, staff, and other students, who become sort of closely aligned with the life of campus, and even in a virtual way, they're more likely to stay in school, they're more likely to do better academically, and they're more likely to be satisfied with the experience at the end of it. So we have an array of ways for students to be able to do this, and have really been pushing a full court press to encourage student engagement, even in a virtual space. So for example, at the start of the year this year, we held our first ever virtual involvement fair, in which we had more than 200 student clubs and organizations create individual virtual student tables in breakout rooms and Zoom. And we had more than 550 students participate in that virtual involvement fair and get connected with clubs and organizations in ways that they can stay actively involved in the life of campus. Based on that success, we're going to continue to do more of those kinds of things. We already have more than 300 events slated for the year in a virtual space, and more are coming on every day that we're very excited about. One that I most love is that last Saturday we held our first virtual Jubilee concert, and we had more than 900 views at that concert. So we're creating new opportunities for students to connect with us. Through our Campus Y, which is our social justice hub on campus, we already have more than 100 students connected with virtual service opportunities and placements. So encourage them to reach out to us through our Carolina Union and through Student Life and Leadership to find out these opportunities. We're doing one-on-one appointments, virtual sort of connecting, as we said, and there are great resources still that students can take advantage of there that I think are incredibly valuable to their Carolina experience. The next thing that I would say as a tip for you all to encourage your students is to remind them how important it is right now to stay active, and do this in a way that makes sense for them, because for every student it's different. But through campus recreation right now, we have, if students are in the area, the opportunity for them to come and participate in outdoor recreation programs. We also are doing all manner of virtual classes. And I think just this next week, we're getting ready to reopen some of our facilities on a limited basis in line with the governor's recent directive. So encourage them to find ways that they can stay physically active, and use this even as an opportunity for an extension of connection to our Carolina folks. And then the last thing is to stay in contact with us. encourage students, and the Chancellor already mentioned this, which I love and appreciate, but encourage students to take advantage of office hours and one-on-one appointments. He's absolutely correct that we are hearing from many, many students that this kind of space is far more comfortable for them to sort of come in and engage with us. And so as we think about the things that are sort of positive that come out of this, I think the Chancellor's right that this will be another vehicle for us to be able to connect with students in ways that feel comfortable and welcoming for them. And so, you know, we are doing all manner of this as well, whether it's a one-on-one appointments or sort of group classes or study halls, those kinds of things. Encourage them to reach out and let us know what they want and what will be helpful to them. We know, and we've already spent some time talking about this, and I'm so grateful for the community's understanding and involvement with respect to how our distancing and our social isolation, right now are having an impact on our students' health and wellness, and particularly their mental health. We know that anxiety and depression are already high and a significant concern among college-age students, and the reality is that the pandemic is not helping this in any way. So the Chancellor is right that we are continuing to reach out and provide telemedicine appointments and to a degree in-person appointments for both students' medical needs and their mental health needs. And we did just recently launch our first multicultural health program in CAPS, which is our Counseling and Psychological Services team, in which we were very fortunate to be able to hire 4 post-MSW fellows who are finishing up a 2-year rotation with us, and to be able to hire them in particular to address the needs of our students of color on campus, which we know have some unique qualities to that. So those folks were hired in August and are right now engaging in significant outreach specifically to our communities of color to be able to address their particular needs and help, again, students get connected. So, and encourage students too to call us if they get stuck on a problem, if they need help with something, if they have a question that for whatever reason they're having difficulty answering. You know, they can reach out to me, our Dean of Students team, and our Student Care Hub is a great sort of central resource if they're not sure where to go, but we're here to help. We want to make sure that students right now know that distant doesn't mean disconnected, and in particular that we do everything we can to reach out through both in-person means and the airwaves right now to make sure that they feel that sort of Tar Heel family connection, because we know that this is a link that we all share that absolutely transcends place and space. So I thank you so much for your partnership in terms of helping students be successful and helping them get engaged, stay active, and stay in contact with us, stay connected. And so with that, I'm glad to answer any questions that as would be helpful. Doug and Beth, I kick it back to you briefly.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to start off with hindsight is 2020, and without wallowing in coulda, shoulda, woulda, what lessons learned from this fall's off-ramping will be most helpful to make sure our next attempt is more successful regarding testing and other aspects of coming back?
Certainly, I appreciate the question a lot. I think there are so many lessons learned, and we are still engaged in a process where, in particular, we're talking with a lot of students about what worked for you and what didn't. And as you may imagine, there are wide-ranging perspectives on this. So what works for one student will say, I so desperately needed to be back on campus, and another student will say, I really needed virtual to be, the primary way that I was connecting. So there is no one-size-fits-all on this. So I think that is one of the key lessons learned, is that we are, as I think we've discussed here, a diverse, vibrant community. And it is really important that we are finding a whole host of ways to be able to connect with students in a manner that is most sort of responsive to them and their needs. So I would say that is the first thing. I think the other thing that is important for all of us to recognize, and this is not just, how it relates to students, we're all, I think, feeling a little cooped up and a little sort of remote from people. And that, that has had an impact. And so that when students returned to us, the desire to reconnect and to re-engage and connect with one another in spaces, in physical spaces, was really important and powerful. And I think students by and large did that in really responsible ways. But it's difficult when, there's an opportunity to sort of come back and be physically in person with one another. And when, to be honest, in higher education, we spend so much time, as I have done today, talking about the importance of connection, right? We know that that sort of interaction and that engagement is critical for folks. And so people really wanted to do that. that. And I think it was really hard. It placed a strain on students in terms of, this has always been so much a part of the higher education experience. How are you sort of telling me that I can't do that in the same ways now? But, you know, this virus was just much more virulent and came on stronger and harder than I think any of us anticipated. Certainly, we have had the very best medical experts and epidemiologists guiding us throughout this conversation. And so I think this is new for everyone, learning, you know, the issues of, you know, where has testing, for example, because I know that was a specific question, where has testing been successful and what modes has it been successful and where has it not been successful? Because as I think we talked about with the Parents Council last night, there here again has not been any sort of one approach that seems to have worked for every institution. At some places, reentry testing and ongoing surveillance testing has been successful. At other places, it hasn't in stopping the virus. And so, you know, how can we again pursue a multi-front approach to be able to meet the needs of our students and try to combat this virus and try to make sure that as much as possible it doesn't prevent that sort of important Carolina connection that we've talked about. I think those are the things that we will sort of take away from this and are continuing to do so.
Very good, thank you. So this is a conversation that Beth and I have a lot at home about how we think about, you know, feedback and providing information. And so we were curious for our parents, what's the best way to provide feedback related to particular issues? Is it through particular departments or are there certain avenues? And then in a separate question, how is that data, how is that information analyzed, reviewed, and used to the greater good for the whole university?
So my short answer would be yes. Please send it through email. Please send it in person. Please send it through the communities in which you're involved. We will take it all. It is really important, particularly as we are, as we've discussed here, still learning about this virus and how best to respond and how best to meet the needs of our students, that we hear from folks about what is working for them and what isn't. So I would say all channels are welcome. But certainly if you can feel free to use my office and our team in student affairs as a primary conduit for that, if it's helpful for folks. Again, if you are connected with the parent council, and I assume you all will welcome that feedback and input in the same way, because I know we are closely connected with you and have conversations throughout the year. And then, you know, I will say there isn't necessarily a science in terms of how we incorporate it. It is an ongoing dialogue and conversation, and I think an important sort of weighing of what's in the best interest of our students and our community, and how can we, as we've discussed, I think at some length here, meet the needs of the entire community. It is always a balancing act, and we are mindful that, you know, no matter what we do, it may not make everyone happy, and that is a tough circumstance to be in, right? I hate it when, you know, I hear from a parent or a student that we've disappointed them, but we do know that it is difficult to meet everyone's needs, and are just trying to do the best we can to make sure that we've got a robust offering here and a community that, as I said, is responsive in this sort of world-class public research university way that I think we have long been known for and will continue to be.
Thank you. So Chancellor Guskiewicz alluded that we'll probably know in the next week or two about the start date for the spring semester, and I assume that during that time frame as well, it'll be, you know, are we coming back and what will that look like? Can you share with the other parents about the residential capacity, the reduction of residential capacity, and the timeline for some of those decisions and announcements as well?
I think they will be in concert with one another, frankly. And, you know, certainly if the chancellor has other wishes for this, I know we will be guided by that. But one of the things that I know was particularly difficult about the fall was that, again, it came upon us so quickly that we were having to make decisions and try to communicate, you know, how we were handling this and how we were responding to the students' needs in such a real-time way that it was challenging to make sure that everyone was in the loop. For better or for worse, I think, you know, recognizing that the spring is, even though the time is short, hopefully we will have an opportunity to make sure that we come out with a full plan that talks about, here's the start date, here's when registration will happen, here are the various modes of instruction, here are the students that we can expect to house on campus. Again, I don't anticipate that we will be at full capacity, certainly, but that is one of the discussion points. Our hope is that we can welcome back as many students as possible and factor in, as we did for this fall, fall, the students who need to be here due to a hardship or due to an academic program or a medical need. And then as many students as we can in a really safe and responsive way. I anticipate that we'll look particularly at single occupancy models, again, to just reinforce safety and do everything we can to minimize the spread of the virus. But we know it will likely still be here in the spring. And so to prepare for it and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to stop the incidents that happen in the fall will be a primary focus. So I would encourage you to stay tuned. Our groups and the various committees that the Chancellor has convened to advise us and guide us, in addition to wide-ranging feedback that we'll take, as we've discussed, from all avenues, will be important in developing that plan. And we will be sure to make sure that we announce it just as soon as possible. We are excited about the possibility of having students back on in the spring, and hopefully in some significant numbers. I hope that's one of the messages that you all will get today. No one is loving this environment, but it is an opportunity for us, and one that I know we will meet the challenge, and I feel confident about our preparations and our conversations for the spring, and we will be in touch with you just the moment we have it.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. You know, we agree. We're with you. We enjoy the numbers when we're together and the spirit that it creates, and that's Carolina. That's our Hill environment. And so, for you and both the Chancellor, we encourage you to continue to think about that spirit and the well and all of the tradition and history of the college, of the university, as you continue to do great work. Thank you so much for your comments today. We're very grateful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it. And if I may I hand it off to one of my partners in crime here in terms of our governance. Our undergraduate student government president, Reeves Moseley, I think is with us. Reeves and I have gotten to know each other very well, and he is somebody that I have come to rely upon a lot and just appreciate his humor and his brain and his great leadership of our student body. So with that, please allow me to introduce Reeves Moseley.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Johnson. And thank you so much for the work you are doing, as well as yourself, Chancellor Guskiewicz. It's been a pleasure to be able to work with you through these incredibly difficult circumstances. You know, I know going into my tenure as student body president, I wasn't expecting a global pandemic or a national racial pandemic too, but I know we're all working together to try to provide the best possible experiences for our students. So I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak here today as UNC's current student body president. My name is Reeves Moseley, and I'm a senior studying political science with minors in public policy and business. While these are not the circumstances that I had originally anticipated for Family Weekend, I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you all this year, even if I cannot see you in person. Since my first semester on campus, I've been able to grow as a person, and I've been fortunate enough to see others grow around me as well. However, there is still so much preventing students from connecting with each other and the community around them. I ran for student body president with the goal of building bridges between the different parts of campus to distinguish a unified student voice across campus. More than ever, I think this is vital to the well-being of our campus, as our student body is impacted and further apart in ways various than ever before. While it is important to acknowledge the struggles and obstacles that our community and its members are enduring in the face of COVID-19, I am confident that Carolina will emerge from this crisis stronger than ever, despite all of the challenges present. When I took on the role as student body president, I had specific goals in mind and things I was hoping to accomplish during my time here. Even though COVID-19 has taken over as a prominent issue on campus and as a part of life, I'm excited to have the opportunity to work towards several of our initial platform policy goals that include advocacy around mental health, civic engagement, sustainability, multicultural affairs and diversity outreach, and academic affairs, among the other issue areas. The hard work of the people within and around student government, in combination with the role of on-campus staff, have made me confident that we will persevere as a student body and as a community during these difficult and extremely challenging times. It has been a difficult tenure navigating such ambiguous and difficult circumstances, but I am so honored to have the opportunity to advocate for such a diverse and dynamic student body. I find comfort in thinking about the strength that the Carolina community has had from the very beginning. Since its founding, Carolina has persevered through war and peace, through sickness and health. While it seems like today we are tested more than ever, I've not had a single doubt in my mind that this strong Carolina legacy will persist long into the future. Despite all of the unrest, confusion, uncertainty, and fear, my commitment to you is to embody the strength of a Carolina leader. I'm looking forward to continuing work with Chancellor Guskiewicz, Dr. Johnson, and the rest of the university leadership to navigate an uncertain future together that will benefit the Carolina community as a whole, long into the future. And thank you for the opportunity to share the student voice to improve our incredible university. Please enjoy Family Weekend, and I'm excited to get to work with you all and hopefully see you in person soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Moseley. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Do you mind to take a question from some parents?
Of course, yeah.
We've had lots of questions coming in through the chat. What would you say if you had to pick one issue that you're hearing most from students during this challenging time? What would that issue be, and how are you working with the administration to address it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty broad question. I guess it's a great question, but there are a lot of issues that are facing students directly and indirectly right now. I would say, there's been a lot of, disparities in the prevalence of each single issue. For example, when we took the off-ramp, it was housing and prorated refunds for students, and then it was grading, accessibility, and academic resources available for students who are transitioning into an online format. But honestly, as Dr. Johnson and Chancellor Guskiewicz both alluded to, I think right now it's the mental health of students. I think, we're approaching midterm season, and we would be approaching our fall break or a traditional fall break in the next couple of weeks, but students don't really have that break or opportunity anymore just because we're working through a condensed semester. So trying to prioritize our own mental health and self-care right now has been really difficult. Paying attention to online classes is not an ideal circumstance in any scenario. So just making sure that we're all taking care of each other right now, and navigating the resources available to us for mental health resources, specifically through like cabs on campus and things like that, has been something that we're trying to advocate for students.
President Moseley, you have lived the life of the administrator in this role, but talk to our parents as a student for a moment, and just how has your life changed, and what are the things that you do every day, right? What's this different? You're a senior now, and then what are your hopes for the days ahead?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So when I ran for student body president, I developed a platform that was about 40 pages with different issues, with a lot of different kind of issue areas. So I alluded to that as well, with mental health, civic engagement, multicultural affairs, things like that. We've been sidelined by everything that happened this summer. And so I'm trying to kind of navigate our administration back on track so we can be able to advocate for students in different areas around just the realm of COVID-19. So it's kind of a double-edged sword almost, and, trying to work toward a spring semester for students, but at the same time, trying to provide, civic engagement and voter mobilization for students who are off campus back in their homes across the country or even internationally, or students who are just off campus now, who either are requesting absentee ballots or trying to vote early, things like that. It's a difficult circumstance to try to navigate when we're so unsure what the future is going to look like. So that's one thing that's kind of been different. I always, just as a student, I have a pretty structured schedule. So usually, I'd wake up, go to class, grab breakfast, things like that, and then go to the gym. I mean, the gym hasn't been open for the past couple of months. So I've been trying to do a HIIT workout in my living room or something like that, or go on a run. So it's been weird trying to navigate my own life on top of everything that's so online, if that makes sense. So the structure of my life as a student and just as as a young, 21-year-old has been completely different than what I thought it would be coming to my senior year. But I mean, we're playing the cards we've been dealt, and we're doing the best we can to try to have any semblance of normalcy than we, just given the circumstances.
I'm not sure if we said this before you started speaking, but I do want to share with the parents who are tuned in that Reeves is from Dallas, Texas, and he's studying political science with a minor in business and public policy. He's a Keenan Scholar at the Keenan Flagler Business School and has served in several other positions before becoming president now. And your last message about resilience, I think, is a tremendous one that we can all take away, and we are all struggling right along with you. So Reeves, thank you for being with us. Our time together has come to a close, so we are we will continue. We look at the question and answers, and I feel like we got to most of them. I hope that if your question wasn't specifically answered, that the spirit of those questions were answered, and look for, it sounds like additional communication from the university over the next week or two about plans for next semester. And just know that as the national chairs of the Carolina Parents Council, we share your hopes and concerns about being back in the classroom and optimizing the ideal Carolina experience as best we can in these times. So thank you for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the rest of Family Weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.